Yo, what is going on, everybody? You have Tone here, coach of your Miami Malamarlins, and I am here bringing you something a little bit different, but really not so much. So, this video that's coming to you today is a draft recap for a little bit of a side league, or a little get-together league that was put together by KASL, and pretty much it's just a KASL or the KASL league. So pretty much this league was pretty much excluded only to people that were subscribed to KASL on Twitch. So it was specifically a Twitch subscriber league, and he put it together, took all the people that were that were subscribed to him on Twitch, put this league together, and pretty much we had a draft style format, this little sub league that we're doing. As far as this league is concerned, it's a side thing, but at the same time I'm still going to try to be as competitive as I possibly can, but at the same time try to be a little bit more casual, though I say casual in the loose sense, because my draft for this league is still pretty doggone fun and interesting for my standards. So what ended up happening for the most part is the subscribers, or the people that participated in this league, were separated into two separate divisions. There's a pink division and a green division, which is kind of surmised by the logo, with the Palisand having a pink flag and a green flag in the other hand. And as you can tell by the title at the bottom, I am a part of the pink division with 11 other coaches. So each division only has 12 coaches. We each draft our team in a tiered style format, under standard rules, with every team getting a tier 1, a tier 2, 2 tier 3s, a tier 4, and a tier 5, a mega, and then 400 points for their free picks. The only exception is if you draft a tier 1 mega, you lose 40 points from your free point total, so you only have 360 to work with for your free picks. So I pretty much had to take that into consideration when I drafted this team. So with all that out of the way, I'm just going to jump right into the draft recap and explain, pretty much break down the team that we drafted for this league, why we drafted what we drafted, and all that stuff. So let's get underway. So the draft order was randomized, and among the 12 coaches in my division, suffice to say, I got the first pick in the draft, which never happened. This is actually the first time I have ever drafted number 1 in a league, casual or otherwise. Never happened before. I've been number 2 a couple of times, but I've never been a number 1 pick whatsoever. So I really had to make this pick count, because of course it's something. It's gotta be a good mon. I have access to I get first crack at every mon available on the table. So I had to make sure the first mon I picked for my team was something I felt comfortable using in the long run. And so with that being said, with all the mons I've used in the past, I've used stuff like Celesteela, I mean, it's just one Pokemon, but other than that, other Pokemon I've drafted have usually come towards the back end, so stuff like Garchomp and all that stuff. But Garchomp isn't really a number 1 pick. I've never drafted Zygarde, Orlando T, so I figured it'd be a perfect opportunity to try to snag up one of them. But instead, I decided to go a different direction and draft the Pokemon I probably will never use again, or if I do use it again, it will be probably scarce, considering my initial thought process in terms of just drafting towards the back end of the draft, and usually this Pokemon will never get to the back end of the draft. So with the first pick in the KASL Sub-League Pink Division, I decided to pick up Tapu Koko. So it's one of those rare times in which I actually draft an offensive mon number 1, because usually I would get a Pokemon that's either able to run bulky or run multiple sets and roles Tapu Koko is offensive, but it's not to the point where it can't be run bulky either. There are some surprise factors in that too, but other than that, just having something fast right off the bat and something versatile is also very, very cool, with the fact that it can be it's a special attacker. Electric terrain is very, very nice. Thunderbolt, Dazzling Gleam is a very good stat combination. Can also be access to Brave Bird, U-Turn, Volt Switch, Calm Mind. It can do other stuff like dual screens. It can be a great Zmon specs user. Whatever role you put Tapu Koko in, it can pretty much fulfill that role pretty well. And what I decided to do was take the opportunity not to try to build around Tapu Koko as a whole, but support it the best way I can, considering the mods I had available at my disposal when it came back to me for round 2, and so on and so forth. So instead of trying to keep up with the offensive route and just keep drafting like Volt Turn offense, I put a little bit of a spin on it, put some bulk to support Koko, because Koko doesn't have the best bulk, and it would like to have something reliable to fall back on when some strong wall breakers do want to come in and pick off Tapu Koko. So that's what I ended up doing with the next few picks of mine. So starting with my round 2 pick here, I tried to pick up something bulky, like I said, for Koko to fall back on. And they don't come any better or more reliable in my case, as far as I'm concerned. And for those of you that know me, this next pick should come as no surprise. I mean, come on. Let's be real, come on. Were you really expecting me not to have a Ferrothorn somewhere on this roster? Okay. But all joking aside, and how much I love Caltrops, my Ferrothorn, the fact that I needed something that can complement Tapu Koko's potential sweeping capabilities in the late game, that comes in the form of having something with access to Stealth Rock, and the added bonus of having a Spiker too. Ferrothorn can do both. Great defensive typing in Grass Steel, couldn't pass that up, also gets access to healing moves with Leech Seed, can be a nuisance with Thunder Wave in some situations, and it also has some other cool utility options at its disposal, like Knock Off, Bulldoze, any little nitpick moves I want to try to run on Ferrothorn, I can do that. And like I said, it also helps out with Tapu Koko potentially sweeping with some Stealth Rock and Spike support. Can't go wrong with that on any draft as far as I'm concerned. And having something as reliable or something you can fall back on is very, very important to have in a draft. Ferrothorn just works for me. There's no real reason why it works for me, but Ferrothorn has never let me down in any situation I put Ferrothorn in. It puts in work, and it can be a surprising factor if you're not adequately prepped for Ferrothorn, which I know most people will be, but it just comes down to the support you put around said Pokemon and it can work effectively. Ferrothorn is no exception to the rule, and that's why I picked it up in round number 2. Maybe a stretch, especially in only a 12-person division, but considering the fact that it's a tier draft and a points draft, I could have waited for another bulky Steel type, but seeing Ferrothorn there, I just couldn't pass it up. There was absolutely no way I let Ferrothorn go after that. So with the next my next round pick, I figured I want to pair up something Ferrothorn with something that also can cover for its weaknesses somewhat, in a sense, but you'll see pretty much what I'm talking about here. So what I wanted to do with my next pick was also grab try to get another Stealth Rocker and get something that can at least alleviate the pressure off of Ferrothorn trying to take on fire and fighting attack and all that stuff. So with my round 3 pick, maybe a stretch, but I decided to pick up Gliscor round number 3. Maybe a little bit too early, but I had a couple of reasons behind Gliscor. First and foremost, another Stealth Rocker, for one. Number 2, a potential I have my Volt Turn core with Koko plus Gliscor. Number 3, Gliscor plus Ferrothorn is a very solid core, since Gliscor does resist fighting attacks for Ferrothorn, vice versa. Ferrothorn can cover water attacks and some ice type attacks, quote unquote, depending on what the mon is. And Gliscor can also act as a decent fire check for Ferrothorn in some situations. But overall, Gliscor gives me so much utility in one Pokemon, especially considering that Poison Heal is a awesome ability to have for free 1/8 of your recovery every single turn with yourself being poisoned. Being able to Stealth Rock, being able to defog while still having Poison Heal makes it a reliable option in most situations where I'm desperate need for a defog against some hazards. Gliscor has my back. Can also be Swords Dance, can run Facade, Knockoff, EQ, Toxic for those bulkier Pokemon. Like, the list goes on and on. Gliscor is just as reliable as Ferrothorn in terms of the utility option, and it's not passive at all in the slightest. And the fact that it can do all this while being able to run Poison Heal just made it so much better in this meta, and I absolutely love the fact that I was able to get Gliscor on this team. This is the first time I'm using Gliscor in Draft League format. I pretty much called this the Lando T I never got to use, more or less. But nonetheless, like I said, couldn't pass up Gliscor for round 3. Maybe a stretch, but you never know. It probably would have made it back to me anyway. So that is Gliscor for my round 3 pick. So I figured round 4 I would try to at least look at a Mega to get, because I didn't really have my draft plan worked out at this point. I was just trying to get some pieces to fit around Coco and make its life easier. And I figured one of the things I wanted to pair up Tapu Koko with was Mega Medicham. But unfortunately, Mega Medicham got taken before it came back to me for my round 4 pick, which was fine. I didn't really have any other options, or I didn't really have anything at that point I was looking at in terms of getting something in particular. That there was no Mega I was trying to go for. But at the same time, I also wanted to finish a Dragon Fairy Steel Core, and all the dragons I want that were available at this time was either unable for me to get because they were either tier 1 or they were tier 2 dragons, but I didn't want those either. So at the very least, there was one option I can go with my Mega that completes my Dragon Fairy Steel Core, so I decided to go on that option instead. So round 4, picked up Mega Charizard X. Not the most ideal situation because I really wanted Mega Medicham. Spoilers, that was the only snipe of the entire draft for me, of me getting one of Mega Medicham over Megazord X. But Megazord X plus Tapu Koko actually is a very solid offensive core because of the fact that Tapu Koko can struggle to break through bulky grass types, since most grass types like Amoonguss, Tangrowth, Bulu, Douche can easily force Koko out, and having something like Zardex to come in, force out those grass types with Flare Blitz or Fire Punch. I'd probably get a free Dragon Dance on the Switch. I'll also be an SD user. And I can even run stuff like bulkier Zards or bulky DD Zards, which are actually pretty fun in most situations. The main thing I have to worry about though, since I drafted Mega Charizard X, is the fact that I have to cover for the Stealth Rock weakness. But I do have Gliscor as a reliable defogger, and I also have Koko, which can defog too if the situation does call for it. But I want to try to avoid doing defog Koko, if anything, most of the time, because I don't want to hinder its offensive potential in that sense. But Zardex is still a very solid mon. Completes my Dragon Fairy Steel Core with Ferrothorn and Tapu Koko. Benefits from the Stealth Rock and Spike support from Ferrothorn and Gliscor. Couldn't pass that up. So even though it's not the Mega I wanted, I still think it's a very solid pick for my particular team, just so I can have that extra offensive potential at my disposal. So that is Mega Charizard X for round number 4. So heading into round number 5, since I had the wheel pick, I wanted to fortify my bulk and get myself a bulky water type. So there were a couple of water types I was looking at, but I wanted something with recovery and something that can definitely tank some hits. So what ended up happening here is, so my round 5 pick, as you're going to see, it's Vaporeon, but what actually happened was my round 5 pick was actually Toxapex. I picked up Toxapex round 5, but the thing is, the main reason I went after Toxapex was the fact that I didn't see any other bulky water types available, but I made a little bit of a mistake. And what happened was I was actually looking at the wrong document when I made this pick, because I saw Vaporeon was gone, and I was like, okay, I have to go get Toxapex because there was no other bulky water type available that I wanted. So, and then it turned out afterwards, after the draft had ended, that I was looking at the wrong document, and it turned out Vaporeon was available, and I was like, oh, okay, so let me fix that, let me grab that instead. So I dropped Toxapex for Vaporeon, so that's why you see Vaporeon here instead of Toxapex. Both Pokemon fill the role of bulky water type. The only difference is Vaporeon is less passive. Much less passive. It pretty much does most of what Toxapex can do, but with more offensive potential at the expense of having less bulk. Physical bulk. But nonetheless, Vaporeon does give me a lot of different options, which of course it can't be compared to Toxapex. It's less, like I said, less passive, a Wish Passer, which is also very, very solid to have, more momentum, because I can dry Baton Pass, so I can force something in, the Baton Pass out into Koko, Zardex, whatever the situation calls for, and then I can go from there, set up sweepers. I can phase out with Roar. It gets access to Heal Bell, if I make it more of a cleric and all that stuff. So, and it gives me a more solid water check with it being able to absorb water attacks with Water Absorb, and pairs up a lot better with Gliscor, because it can check electric types too, and Zardex can take care of the bulky grass types. So this works out very, very well for me. Now, I was glad I was able to pick it up post-draft, so this works out definitely for me in my favor, and pretty much more or less fortifies the bulk I have in my draft with Ferrothorn, Vaporeon, and Gliscor. So that's very, very cool to have. So with my bulk more or less solidified, I do grab some other bulky stuff later on. I figured I wanted to add on to the wall breaking potential I had on my team, because so far I only had really 2 Pokemon with offensive potential. I didn't really count Gliscor in a sense, but because it needs like an SD boost to do like more specific significant damage. So I decided to pick up a wall breaker for round number 6, and with my round 6 pick, I ended up going with Heracross. And I am so grateful that Heracross was filled to me here in round number 6, because like I said, gives me a physical wall breaker and an extra way of breaking past bulky grass types for Tapu Koko with Guts, Flame War, Boosted Mega Horn, Facade, Close Combat. Can still be very, very solid with Scarf Moxie. To get a late game sweep going, and overall it just benefits my team a lot because of the fact that because most of my passive stuff can be worn down by like Toxic and whatnot, and it helps to have a status absorber on my team. Heracross fits the bill in so many ways because of the fact that not much can switch into the combination of Close Combat, Mega Horn, Facade, Knockoff, the list goes on, and it can also run Swords Dance too to break past bulkier mons even better, especially if it combined with Guts Flame War, which just turns it into an absolute nuke if teams are unprepared. It is a little bit slow, but I still feel as though with my potential Volturn momentum, with Koko, with Gliscor, with Baton Pass Vaporeon into Heracross, and if your team has no switch-ins, then you're in for a bad time. That's pretty much all I can say. about that. But this Heracross is a very, very solid wall breaker for my draft, and I am so glad to pick it up here for my team for round number 6. So, moving on to round 7, what I wanted afterwards was a couple of things. Since I dropped Toxapex early on, post draft. The next mod I wanted to have some sort of poison toxic like absorber, and I really wanted to have a strong dark type too, to I have a better psychic check too, because my psychic check is Ferrothorn and it can get worn down by like Focus Blast or whatever the case may be. So with that, my round 7 pick, we have our Drapion here, and Drapion I am very well accustomed to at this point in my draft league career. It's like the 3rd time I'm using Drapion in draft league format. But Drapion covers a lot for my team. It gives me a T-Spike Absorber, a Toxic Spike Setter, a Dark type so I can spam some strong stab knockoffs, which is very, very nice. It also gets access. It can also be an offensive potential with Sword Stance. Can be a potential Choice Scarf user. Can run Spadef and face a lot with Whirlwind, so it's not just a one-trick pony. So Drapion in and of itself is very, very solid for my draft. It also gives me something with a little more physical bulk. And like I said, I also needed a psychic check or immunity for in this case, which Drapion does fit very, very nicely. So overall, it fits my team pretty well as far as I'm concerned. I do like the potential that Drapion has on my team for this particular drafting of bulky offense as far as I'm concerned. So that's what we have here for our round 7 pick in Drapion. So heading into the last few rounds, or my last 4 picks, I decided to just pick up some Pokemon that covered a few things I was listening on my team while also covering some specific typings. So with that in mind, the next pick I ended up going with, I ended up getting up Miss Magus, which kind of, it seems kind of iffy. Well, not really iffy, but on this particular draft. But what it does for this team in particular, it gives me a potential spin blocker. So teams are more inclined to prep more for defog if I do bring Hazard Stack on this particular draft. It gives me a ground immunity, which eats the pressure off of Gliscor, constantly taking those ground attacks. And on top of that, it gives me a speed tier between 100 and 110, which I lacked. Because after Tapu Koko, the next fastest Pokemon was Zardex. So having something to outspeed those base 100s can come in handy. Because I had to fit like a potential was Jirachi, Scarf Jirachi, or Scarf 15. I have Scarf Miss Magus to counteract that. So that's also very, very cool. And on top of that, it can be a hindrance. It can be a bulkier set with like Will-O-Wisp, Hex, Pain Split, good utility options like Taunt, Destiny Bond. The list is out there. It goes on for a bit, but overall, Miss Magus does give my team, like I said, it gives my team that needed speed tier, gives me that ghost typing, which is kind of lost on, but I think I got a pretty good mon for tier 4 here, so I can't complain about that. So that is the Miss Magus coming in round number 8. So looking at the rest of my drafts, I figured it'd be best with one of my last 3 picks to get one more Stealth Rocker, because currently I only have 2. I have Ferrothorn and Gliscor. I at least want to have 3 Stealth Rockers if possible on any one draft to ease the pressure of bringing rocks on a specific set and hindering its potential that way. So that's what I ended up doing with a round 9 pick. Round 9, we ended up picking up Piloswine, another Pokemon I'm familiar with in leagues gone by. So the nice thing about Piloswine here is, like I said, another Stealth Rocker. It's a reliable Stealth Rocker at that. Gives me priority, which I believe I do not have. Yeah, I didn't really have priority at this point prior to the acquisition of Piloswine here with Ice Shard. It gives me another Stealth Rocker, but more importantly, it does give me an option here with my Gliscor, because since I have Gliscor here, which is 4 times weak to Ice, I have this Piloswine here, which is not weak to Ice because it's On specific drafts like this, whenever I draft a ground type that's super weak to ice, I always want to have at least one more Pokemon, another ground type that's not weak to ice. So, this pretty much explains the Poliwhirl pick. I actually had two options. It was either pick up Poliwhirl or try to go after Steelix for an added normal resist. But I figured Poliwhirl would be best because, like I said, priority is nice to have, and the again, words. The added bulk I get from Eviolite is also very beneficial, which Steelix cannot do. Not saying Steelix is bad, but on this particular draft, I just felt like Poliwhirl was a little bit more needed in terms of what it can do, and plus Thick Fat giving it a extra resist to ice types and weakening those fire type super effective hits is also very cool. No pun intended. So yeah, that is my Poliwhirl. And speaking of Thick Fat, my next pick pretty much solidifies even more of the bulk I had on my draft. So heading into the last two picks for me, I only had I had enough free points to get at least one tier 3 and one tier 4 because Zardex made me lose 40 points because it was a tier 1 mega. Gliscor was tier 2, so that's 120 points, and Miss Magus was tier 4, which was 60 points, so that was 180, and I already lost 40, so I had 220, so I had 180 to work with, so I could have gotten a tier 2 and a tier 4, or a tier 3 and a tier 4, one of those options. But I decided to get a tier 3 and a tier 4, and the tier 3 I ended up getting round number 10. Just so happened to be another thick mon in and of itself, and a mon I actually got to use and pretty much adore using the last time I had it in the MPL, and that just how happened to be Snorlax. So yeah, the bulk and the fat just keeps coming from this particular draft, and what's nice is I also get a very bulky win condition with potential of Curse Lax, or not Belly Drum Lax, Rest Sleep Talk. But I do have to be careful though, since if I do run Rest Talk Snorlax, I have to be careful of not using it while Electric Terrain is up, since it can't fall asleep in that scenario. But more often than not, Snorlax gives me another potential status absorber, as I can run Stab Facade, so I don't have to run Heracross all the time. There will be some situations where I can't run Snorlax if it's walled by bulky ghost types, but I have stuff like Drapion and other ways of wearing down those bulky dark types, and more often than not, Snorlax can just win a game by itself if my opponent is not prepared to take on something as deadly as a potential Curse Lax, especially with a Gluttony, Figgy Berry, or whatever the case may be. I even get access to Thick Fat, so I can take those fire and ice attacks even better, and act like a pivot with like Pursuit or Crunch for those ghost types, Fire Punch for steel types, EQ. I get a bunch of different options by disposal. The list goes on and on, but Snorlax in itself is a very thick mon. It's a very good boy, good mon. Nothing more I could say about that. And yeah, that is the Snorlax for you. And rounding out my team for the KASL Sub League, we have picked up on our last mon pretty much something that only would work on my particular draft, unless somebody else in the division wanted it because they liked it or anything, but it didn't really make sense because it only really works well when you have a Coco on the squad, and that just so happened to be Alolan Raichu. So I pretty much had this mon pegged on this team for the longest time. I actually came very close to drafting it a lot sooner than I did, because I was pretty afraid of somebody taking it before it got back to me. I probably would have picked it up at like round 9 or something, because I was very paranoid at that point of someone taking Alolan Raichu, but it didn't really make sense to someone else taking Alolan Raichu unless they faced me and wanted to Electric Terrain against me. But I am very glad that Alolan Raichu made it back to me, just to have the fact of having another potential late game sweeper with Surge Surfer, doubling its speed under Electric Terrain, It just makes it so much better. It can be a very good potential late game win con if the situation does call for it. And with the way my team is structured, I think I have the ability of making it work out. Especially considering that most people don't really prep much for like Alolan Raichu because they figure that Koko is such a threat in of itself, and to have all these other bonds that are threats as well. So it's a lot for opponents to try to take in for this particular draft. But overall, I think the team as a whole can benefit, will complement each other very, very well. Like overall, this team I drafted is probably one of the best I drafted in quite a while. It ranks up there with probably one of the top 5 teams I've drafted because of all the versatility I have at my disposal here. Now, no one Pokemon has like overlapped roles in anything as far as I'm concerned. Like everything on my team has a role. Every mon has their potential. There's nothing really overlapping other than like double ground types and double electrics, which is totally fine. Well, I can't really think of anything else much to say about this. I am loving the team. I think I drafted very, very well. And I'm very excited to put this team into action as far as I'm concerned. So, yeah, that's going to be it from me, guys. There's the team you see in front of you. I also forgot to mention that every team in Division can pick 2 Pokemon on their draft to be Z-Mons. And once you pick those Z-Mons, they are your Z-Mons until you drop them for something else. And my Z-Mons on this draft is Tapu Koko and Alolan Raichu, as you see on your screen. So with that out of the way, now we are officially done. That has been the draft recap for the KASL Sub-League Pink Division Season number 1. I hope that you enjoy. Let me know what you think in the comment section below about the squad that we are rocking for this league. I hope you guys are as hyped as I am. And yeah, that's pretty much going to be it from me, guys. Again, I hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. It really does mean a lot to me. I appreciate all of you that take the time out of your day to watch this video and all my videos on my channel that I currently have uploaded the past couple of weeks. So with that all out of the way, again, thank you guys so much for watching. And until week 1 comes around for the KASL Sub League, this is Tone, signing out for now. Peace out.